The Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Sri Guru Maharaj. Today's Tinku speaking. Yeah, Ajay Albe Sriraj Mataji. When are you ready? You can start, Mataji.
Today I am reading Prabhuji. Mataji will be reading tomorrow.
Okay, sure, Mataji. Go ahead, Mataji.
Sure. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna to all dear devotees. Please accept my humble obeisances. All goes to Srila Prabhupada and Gurudev. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam. Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Utirayet. नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी. Today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities, from the text 13. Text 13. I, the pure soul, appearing now, bounded by my activities, I am lying in the womb of my mother by the arrangement of Maya. I offered my respectable obeisances unto him, who is also here with me, but who is unaffected and changeless. He is unlimited, but he is perceived in the repentant heart. To him I offer my respectable obeisances. Text 14. I I am separated from the Supreme Lord because of my being in this material body, which is made of 5 elements, and therefore my qualities and senses are being misused. Although I am essentially spiritual, because the Supreme Personality of Godhead is transcendental to the material nature and the living entities, because He is devoid of such a material body, and because He is always glorious in His spiritual qualities, I offered my obeisances unto Him. Text 15. The human soul further prays. The living entity is put under the influence of material nature and continues a hard struggle for existence on the path of the repeated birth and death. The conditional life is due to his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, without the Lord's mercy, how can he again engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord? Text 16. No one other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead has the localized Paramatma, the partial representation of the Lord, is directing all the inanimated and animated objects. He is present in the 3 phases of time: past, present, and future. Therefore, the conditioned soul is engaged in the different activities by his direction, and in order to get free from the threefold miseries of this conditional life, we have to surrender unto him only. Text 17. Fallen into a pool of blood, stool, and urine within the abdomen of his mother, his own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire, and embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his months and prays, O my Lord, when shall I and wretched soul be released from this confinement? Text 18. My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to the consciousness, although I am only 10 months old, for this causeless mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the friend of all fallen souls. There is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with the folded hands. Text 19. The living entity in another type of body sees only by instinct. He knows only the agreeable and disagreeable senses, prescriptions of that particular body. But I have a body in which I can control my senses and can understand my destination. Therefore, I offer my respectable obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whom I have been blessed with this body, and by whose grace I can see Him within and without. Text 20th. Therefore, my Lord, Although I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of the materialistic life. Your external energy, called Deva Maya, at once captures the newly born child and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of the continual birth and death begins. Text 21. Therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of the nescience with the help of my friend. Clear consciousness, simply by keeping in the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from the entering into the womb of my mother for repeated birth and death. Text 32. Lord Kapila continued, the 10 months old living entity has these desires even while in the womb, but while he thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps uh, Pratyushan propels his forth with his face tuned downward so that he may be born. Text 23. Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with a great trouble, head downward, breathless and deprived of the memory due to the severe agony. Text 24. The child thus fall on the grounded, smeared with the stool and blood, and placed just like a worm germinated from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Yeah, thank you so much, Madhuri. Yeah, Sri Krishna Prabhuji, when you're ready, you can start, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Radharani Mataji. Thank you, Prabhuji. Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nandagopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yogam Sikshastamekam Purusha Puranam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sariradari Kripambudirtamaham Prapadye Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Today we are continuing Lord Kapiladev's instructions to Mother Devahuti. So Lord Kapiladev is describing how the Jivatma comes into the material world and enters into the womb of a mother. You know, so he doesn't specify especially human being, but here he gives the moments of the how the soul enters the mother and then how the soul develops into a plump form, and then the gradually the all the physical head, hands, and all the senses evacuation, all of the nine holes of the body and all of that forms, and gradually how the living entity comes to this material world in a very vivid way. So now Kapiladev is basically graphically showing that how the Jivatma at a particular point regains consciousness of lost 100 births. So regaining consciousness of lost 100 births is actually very important point here. Like, so 100 births, all the agonies, it actually gone through all of those repetition of birth and death. That momentary consciousness it regains, and now because of that regaining the consciousness and of all the repentance of all the sins that he has done, now he is with that consciousness, the soul is praying to the Supreme Lord Paramatma. So starting from verse number 12, Jantur Vacha. So the human soul is basically praying to the Supreme Lord. So Charanara Vindam. So he is praying to that lotus feet of the Supreme Lord with very repentance, and the verses of further from 13 to 24 we will see these verses. So basically the the Jivatma is put in such a position that he's extremely in a very bounded condition. Like we all say, Baddha Jiva, like we are all very bounded in a way. Our freedom is very much curtailed. But the freedom of a baby is so much curtailed that the baby is almost in a very agonistic condition, surrounded by is almost like a completely jail, but it's even much more intense than jail. So the what's the here the Janturu Vacha, the soul is basically praying from verse number 13, that he's remembering the Supreme Lord, who is actually the is awarding all the results of his past karma. So, and basically, the Jivatma is concluding that because of my sins, I am actually suffering. And now, how to come out of that cycle of birth and death is the contemplation of the Jiva. So now the Jivatma is contemplating on that, how to come out of it, and how to again take the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. And that is the whole contemplation. So now the soul is praying, Baddha iva karma bir. So avruta. So because of my activities, I am just bound up, and now I'm lying in this mother's womb. And by the arrangement of Mayam, Avalambya Mayam. So by the arrangement of this Supreme Lord's Maya, now he's praying Ashta Vishuddham Avikaram Akanda Bodham. So the Lord, saying that Lord is actually Asta Vishuddham, is completely pure, and he's Avikaram. Avikaram means Lord doesn't change. He doesn't have any changes that he goes through. Like take the body of mother's womb, and then we gradually develop, and then the old age comes, we die, and again we enter into another mother's womb. So these vikaram is not happening. Oh Lord, you are actually changeless. And you are akanda bodham. Akanda bodham is you're completely with possessing of unlimited knowledge. So unlimited knowledge means that there is no point that Lord will come under the influence of Maya. So he's always above the Maya. And that is your position, O Lord. Now I offer my respectful obeisances. He says, Avashitam Namami. So he is praying, the soul is praying to the Lord with a very repentful heart. This repentful mood, because he has attained that consciousness. So in Krishna consciousness also, we say that when the first time when any person comes in contact with devotees, he can vividly see all of his sins in front of his eyes, and then he becomes a little bit repentant. And that is a really a nice mood, because the Lord is actually in the heart. He is revealing, okay, now you want to come to my shelter. You see that your nature has to be changed from all of these bad qualities has to be removed. So you have to work hard in your consciousness. So the Lord actually helps the living entity to make that step forward. So similarly here, the Jivatma is repenting. So Jivatma is repenting, and he's praying to the Lord who is residing in the heart. So now again, Prabhupada, in every purport, he makes several points which could be repetitive, but he's emphasizing that how this Jivatma is actually life after life. He's again getting an opportunity, and again he's missing that opportunity. So, so here Bhagavad Gita also confirms that Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanaman Mam Prapadyante Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabhaha. So such a great soul is very, very rare. So here the soul is praying, but then you would see that once he comes out of the womb to this material world, again this, because of the influence of Maya, is completely covered. So that is why this consciousness, um, this pure consciousness, staying at that pure consciousness is extremely difficult. That's only possible by the after many births of repetition of this suffering and coming to that conclusion that Vasudeva Sarvamiti Sa Mahatma Sudurlabha is very rare to find such a Mahatma. So here in the verse number 14, so the Jivatma is praying that he is separated from the Supreme Lord because he's saying that this material body is made of Panchabhuta Rachite. So it's made of the Sarire Rahita Sharira. So this material body, which is made of the Panchabhutas, five material elements, is um, is separated from the Supreme Lord because of um, senses being misused. And he's saying, although he's spiritual, but because he's separated because of this misuse of his senses. So now Supreme Lord is being transcendental. Tena Vikunta Mahimanam. So his glories are unobscured, meaning he is always transcendental because the Lord doesn't have a material body. The Supreme Lord doesn't have a material body, and he has spiritual, qualities. And then saying, he's praying obeisances to the Lord, Purushayo Pumam Sam. So he's basically offering again repeated obeisances. So specific points here that Lord is transcendental to the material senses and is transcendental to the material nature. These 2 points the Jivatma is glorifying. And he's on the contrary, he's saying, I have this material senses, material body, which I am not using. I'm misusing the senses. So this is the contrary that Jivatma is contemplating on. So here Prabhupada explains that the Jivatma is very minute. He's like a Anu, he's like a Anu and Lord is like a Vibhu. So because of our minute nature, we have the tendency to be subjected to the material nature's influence. So that is the reason that we should always take shelter of the Lord so that we can always be free from the influence of the material nature. But because the Lord is Vibhu, he is so powerful that he never comes under the influence of Maya because he's also the master of Maya. So, and the living entity is further praying that he is samsarika pati charam stad abhishramena. So meaning this repetition of birth and death his living entity is going through is a very hard struggle for existence. Yan mayaya gunakarma nibadane asmin. So nibandane ashmin. So he is basically being he is being put under this repetition of birth and death by the guna karma nibandane. So because of his activities and qualities, he is again being put into this repetition of birth and death. And nashta smriti punarayam pravirnita lokam. Um, so he's the reason also the living entity is saying, because he's in full consciousness now praying to the Lord. What is the reason of my this situation? He's saying, Nashna Smritir Punar Ayam. So he is actually because of forgetfulness of the relationship of the Supreme Lord. And now what is the solution? The solution is Mahat Anugraham Antarena. So like he's saying that because Lord, your mercy, only your mercy, I can again engage in your transcendental loving service. Without your mercy, I cannot do that. So the point the Jivatma is concluding here is that Lord's mercy is so important that only by your mercy I can again come back to my eternal relationship, O Lord. So that is the conclusion the Jivatma is saying here. So Prabhupada makes elaborate points that the Mayavadi philosophers think by our own endeavor, our own cultivation of knowledge, of Shastric knowledge, we can understand the difference between matter and spirit, and we can gradually elevate ourselves to the point of liberation. And but that is completely negated here, because the Jivatma is saying without the mercy of the Lord, it cannot come back to the again to the come out of this hard struggle of material existence. So, so this point Prabhupada is stressing very much, because that mercy and our endeavor to understand the Shastra is has to be combined with the mercy of the Lord. So that mercy of the Lord is an essential element in the bhakti process, that any jivatma who is trying to again establish his relationship back, without that component of krupa, mercy, it's not going to happen. So that is why the Mayavadi philosophers endeavoring without the idea of attracting the Lord's attention by service. That service is basically the ingredient which will influence the mercy of the Lord. So in the Shastra also, Atas Sri Krishna Namadi Nabhavat Grahayam Indriya Seven Mukihi Jivado Swayam Eva Swarati Adaha. So by our tongue, when we serve the Lord becomes compassionate and he reveals himself. So that is what Shastra says. And that's what Prabhupada is concluding here, that we should always, by our service, try to attract the mercy of the Lord, and not by our own endeavor of achieving the knowledge that we can actually surpass this Maya. So that consciousness is that understanding is not the correct understanding. And Bhagavad Gita, Krishna also says that this Maya is my Maya, my Devihi Isha Gunamayi. So this Maya is Devi. Devihi Isha Gunamayi, Mama Maya, Duratyaya, Mamevaye Prapadyante, Maya Mitam Tarantite. This is concluding, this surpassing this Maya is very difficult. So only one who surrenders onto me, he can only surpass this Maya. So now the Jivatma is concluding that no one other than the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, is actually directing from within, is directing me from many, many lifetimes. Now here another verse. Traikalikam stira chareshu, meaning the Lord knows the past, present, and future. So he is always, the Lord is always present in the past, now, and as well as the future. And the Lord is directing the living entity in all these three phases. Now the soul is basically concluding that, Lord, because you are directing me, now I am taking your shelter. Please, I am trying to take your shelter. Please release me from this threefold miseries of this conditioned life. So the soul here is in full consciousness, again concluding that the source of all this, because of my misuse of independence, the Lord is always with me. Now I'm turning back to the Lord to come out of this situation. So it's basically analyzing the entire situation, how to come out of this hard struggle, and how to again establish the relationship back with the Supreme Lord. This is the whole prayers here by the Jivatma. So again, Prabhupada makes a point here that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Sarvasya chaham hrudi sannivishto. So I am situated in the heart. Matta smritir jnanam apohanam cha. So this memory and this knowledge is actually I am giving you. And Vedascha sarvam ahameva vedya vedantakrit vedavit eva chaham. So I am the knower of all the Vedas. So again, Prabhupada makes a point that because Krishna is created this Vedas, he actually gave the Vedas. He knows the purpose of the Vedas. So now he himself is saying Please take my shelter so I can relieve you from all this hard struggle of existence. And now, verse number 13, the Jivatma is suffering in this womb with the Dehi Anya Deha Vin Mutra Kupa Patito Brusha Tapta Deha. So this is like the urine, stool, blood. All this is covered in the womb. The baby is covered in all this and is scorched by mother's gastric fire. So in the abdomen, for the digestion, there will be a gastric fire, and the baby is feeling that fire and is being, very, very uncomfortable situation. And the soul is now very anxious to get out of the situation. He's praying, the Lord, please Krupanadir Bhagavan Kadanu. So he's praying to come out of this situation, of this very abominable condition. So Krupanadi is like the um, like here it's translated as person of miserly intelligence. So in Bhagavad Gita also it says Krupana is like the just opposite to the Brahmana, who doesn't utilize this human form of life, for the purpose of coming out of this, making a permanent solution for all the problems. So he is utilizing for a temporary, things just for one life. So here again, the conditioned soul is identifying himself as Krupanadi, miserly intelligence, because of his missing so many opportunities to serve the Lord. So now he's praying that now that I am come to the consciousness, the Jivatma is saying, I am expressing my gratitude with my folded hands. And he is saying that Lord is actually the friend of all fallen souls. So he is saying a particular verse here, Dina Nataha. So Dina Nataha. So Dina Nataha is the refuge or shelter of all the fallen souls. So, and he is expressing his gratitude with the folded hands. So now, so he's again praying, by the mercy of the Lord, he has come to the consciousness. So again, the soul is identifying that the whole situation is just the pure mercy of the Lord. And there is no other reason other than the mercy of the Lord. So verse number 19, the living entity. So again, the living entity is, so here this is basically in these verses, in between Lord Kapildev is also giving, is saying how the living entity is praying, and also he is saying what the living entity is experiencing. So both of these verses comes together. So here is saying, so living entity now saying, because of the consciousness, seasonful consciousness, at this time, he has been blessed with this body by the grace of the Lord. So I can, he can feel the Lord by, presence in the heart. Now, at this point, the living entity is again offering the obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So now the sense perceptions are mentioned here. Sariraka. So how this evolution process, Prabhupada mentions the whole evolution process of the baby coming into the womb in so many species of life, and he's going through the whole sense, how the senses, the Dhamma Sariri, meaning in the body, we have the control of the senses and mind. So only in the human body, we have this special, the situation that we can take full, if we endeavor with the Lord's mercy, we can take full control of the senses and mind. in the animal, other species of the bodies, we will just go by the instincts. If there is a hunger, it'll just go and grab the food. There is just an instinct. But in the human form, there is much more control in the senses and the mind. So that point the Jivatma is realizing, and that is only by your grace. So the Jivatma is now glorifying. So now the living entity is saying, I do not want to be born because, I am in full consciousness, and let me, be in this situation. I do not want to again come into this eternal Bahiranga Shakti, which is your Maya Shakti. I don't want to come into this influence. So the same here also, like Sukadeva Goswami also, we know he stayed in the mother's womb for 16 years. He didn't want to come into this external energy. Similar consciousness here also the Jivatma is experiencing. So now verse number 21, the Jivatma is praying, let me not come into this darknet of I do not want to come out of this womb. Right now I'm in full consciousness. I will deliver myself from this nescience with this clear consciousness, simply by keeping the lotus feet of the Vishnu in my mind. So here Prabhupada makes a point, how is it possible that the Jivatma within the womb is able to, he doesn't have any paraphernalia for worshipping the Lord. There is no Arati paraphernalia. How is the Jivatma is able to do this? And he says there is nothing else required because Bhakti is completely independent. So all the Jivatma has to do is simply remember the Lord in full consciousness. And he quotes the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the cycle of birth and death can be stopped for good just by process of Krishna consciousness, by constantly chanting. So this is again our benediction in this sampradaya. We have this Mahamantra and we can remember the Lord by this Mahamantra. So now last two verses, 22 and 24, Lord Kapiladev, Kapila Uvacha, Kapiladev continues that the 10-month-old baby he says that he has these kind of desires even within the womb. But what happens when because of the air that is pushing the baby out of the womb downwards, then the baby is extreme struggle to come out of the womb, face downwards, and then he is pushed outward with great difficulty. So now, because of that severe agony, now the child, patito bhuvi ashtrun misraha. So the child basically falls on the ground smeared with blood and stool, just like a worm, in the stool. So his comparison is given here. Roru yati gate jnana. So now viparitam gatim gataha. So now he loses his superior knowledge and again falls into the spell of Maya. So this is the last verse for today. So we can contemplate and we can read this translation for the purport Prabhuji is sending today and understand the mood of the Jivatma and how to come out of the situation. Hare Krishna, thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Sri Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for a wonderful class. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.